beautifully wonderful authors this evening. We have a lovely Lorraine Brown, we have James Bailey, and we have Laura Kay. Good evening, everyone. How are we?
Very well.
Good, thank you.
Excellent. Is it raining where you are, or have you had better weather than I have?
Pouring.
Yeah, it's pouring now. It's been quite nice all day, but yeah, not now.
Yeah, I'm in Bristol. I'm in Bristol too, like you. So looking out at the rain.
Yes, I did. I was told this. I was just like, oh, James is actually in Bristol as well. And I went onto your website and I noticed the background of your main photo. I was like, I know where he is, and that was quite. It's quite a small world when that happens. It's quite freaky when the authors are literally around the corner. So that's actually quite good. So I would expect to see you in my store soon.
Yeah.
So we can literally talk bookish things. So this evening's event will basically be talking about things like, obviously you guys have all done romantic comedy books, but they're all with a bit of a twist. So a lot of people might think it's your atypical romantic comedies, but from what I've learned from them and of what I've read of them, they are far from a normal romantic comedy. And I think in this day and age, it's brilliant when you see a fresh take on something, when people go, you know, a lot of my friends will go, oh, a rom-com. But when you read a romantic comedy, especially with one with a twist like all three of yours have, I think it's fantastic. So let me just introduce all three of them. So Lorraine, if you'd just like to tell us a bit about yourself and your book.
Yeah, sure. So my debut novel, Uncoupling, came out on the 18th of February. This is it. And it is a modern love story about a couple who get separated on a night train across Europe and end up in different European cities. And while they're separated, my main protagonist, Hannah, gets to spend the day in Paris with this very handsome but kind of annoying Parisian guy called Leo. And throughout the course of the day, through being with him, through being in Paris, and, you know, through her own kind of soul searching, she begins to work out what she really wants from her life and, you know, where she might have been going wrong. So yeah, it's kind of all set over the course of one day. So it's kind of almost, you can read it in kind of real time. That was the feeling I wanted to get across with it anyway.
Fabulous. And James, would you like to tell us about your book?
Yeah, so my debut novel is called The Flip Side. The book is about a man called Josh who's in his 20s. He starts the year in the worst possible way. He proposes to his girlfriend on the London Eye. She says no, and he's got another 29 minutes to go as they're stuck in the capsule above London. This kind of has a knock-on effect. He ends up not losing his girlfriend, but also losing his job, have to move back home with his parents. So he decides he's going to spend the year flipping a coin instead to make choices. So we kind of follow Josh on his journey throughout the year. So he relies on fates and sees where it takes him.
Fabulous. And Laura, let's hear about from yours.
Yep, so my novel The Split came out in March this year, and it is about a woman named Ali who is dumped by her girlfriend and moves back to Sheffield to live with her dad. And while she's there, she reunites with an old friend, Jeremy, who's going through the same thing. And together they decide they're going to run the Sheffield Half Marathon in a sort of rubbish attempt to win back their exes. And lots of fun happens along the way.
Fabulous. So this is a question I will pose to all three of you. Lorraine, I'll go with you first. What was your main inspiration behind this book? And did you take any kind of life experiences that you've had, or was it all from fabrication?
I think the original hook was from a story my brother had told me, maybe, I don't know, ages ago, 15 years ago or something, where him and his girlfriend had gone traveling, like interrailing, and the train that they were on was really noisy and they both liked their sleep. So his girlfriend got up in the middle of the night and moved carriages. And then when she woke up, the train had actually separated and they'd ended up in different places. And I hadn't even started writing then. It wasn't even on my radar, but I did think, oh, wow, that'd make an amazing beginning to like a book or a film. And so when I started writing, which was actually my second novel, I wrote a novel before this, which is obviously kind of in a drawer somewhere. But, when I started writing this and I was thinking about finding something with a real hook, because that was my feedback from agents the first time, that my story didn't have enough of a hook. I went back to that idea thinking, oh, that could be something that people are interested in. So that, plus my obsession with the film Before Sunrise, which is probably my all-time favorite rom-com, just because it's so simple, two people who meet on a train, get off the train, take a chance on each other. Yeah, so those two things combined were my inspiration.
That's so slightly different from strangers on a train. That's definitely a different kind of story, but we won't go down that route just yet. James, what about you? Was there any kind of life experiences that you wanted to include into this novel, or was there any kind of things that you thought, you know, I've experienced this firsthand?
Yeah, definitely. Fortunately, I didn't have a proposal rejected on the London Eye. That is made up, and I have not spent a year flipping a coin. But certainly, lots of it is drawn from personal experience. I think, you know, it's quite common for debut authors to use real life, and I'm no different. What I would say is it makes it quite good if any like bad situations which happen to you end up being quite good because you can use them in your book. So anything which happens is like really cringy or embarrassing, you can just spin it and then use it. So that has been one good thing I'd say out of writing this. So
you can take those cringeworthy moments and just shine it on something else and be like, well, that didn't happen to me.
Exactly, yeah.
It could have, but people don't need to know. So it's fine. It's fine. And what about you, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, so the story of what happens to Ali has never happened to me, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, I've taken stuff from my real life. I lived in Sheffield for a long time, and the book is set in Sheffield. And some of my sort of favourite places are reimagined in the book. So there's a club that they go to, which is like based on a real place that I used to go to. But no, I mean, I totally agree. It's a great way, it's like a very cathartic way to sort of maybe get out some real life things that might have happened and yeah, get them out in the book.
Yeah, it's in my experience when I've spoke to authors before, there's always kind of, even if it's complete fabrication, there's a bit of your own life in there somewhere, because we've all experienced these things at some point. I mean, romantic wise, I'm as single as they get, and maybe I will do a book one day, because I don't know, people might like train crashes, so we'll see where that goes. The next question I wanted to kind of pose, and again, this was a group question, so Laura, I'll start with you. What was your main way into actually being published as an author? A lot of people either idealize saying it can happen really quickly, or it can take absolute years. How long did it take for you to get a deal with your book?
Well, I was part of the Right Now program, which is a scheme that Penguin run. I got onto Right Now in 2018, the end of 2018. I'd already been writing my book for at least 6 months by then. And then I worked with them for a year. And then it wasn't until the end of 2019, December 2019, that I got my publishing deal, not with Penguin, with Quercus. So it was quite a long road, like certainly from like the time that I started writing the novel to the time that I got a publishing deal was at least 18 months, maybe closer to 2 years, and then another year and a half on top of that before publication.
So would you say to people kind of just have a realistic expectation of it, or did you go into it with the writing program thinking I'll get something sooner? You know, did it feel like, because you were part of this scheme, did you feel more encouraged to kind of, you know, aim for a goal rather than just kind of pitch it to everybody?
Yeah, it made it feel possible in a way that I had never really considered that it was something that I could do before. And I think the brilliance of that scheme is that it puts you in the room with people that can actually make that happen, even if they don't make it happen for you necessarily. It makes you be like, I could talk to these people. I know how to pitch these people now. I know what they're looking for. It all just makes it feel a little bit more real. So no, totally. I didn't go into it for a second thinking there is a definite publishing deal at the end of this, but I did think, now I know at least what I'm aiming for.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of have, to a point, realistic expectations, because from my point of view, being a bookseller, people do idealize being an author. And I know the struggle you guys go through literally just to kind of get noticed in the first place. And it can literally take years and years and years. Lorraine, you mentioned about a first novel that's in a drawer somewhere. And I know another author, Stacey Halls, she always jokes about she's got a very first or like novel in her drawer that's been rejected X amount of times and she just doesn't talk about it. So Lorraine, how was it for you trying to, you know, secure your first, you know, full publication deal?
Yeah, I mean, it was long. So yeah, as I said, but I did a couple of short writing courses, and then I wrote this first novel and sent it out to agents, and maybe 25 agents, and maybe got one or two personal kind of replies, rather, you know, that weren't the sort of standard, no, we're not interested. And they basically said the story's not strong enough and we wouldn't be able to sell it, kind of thing. So that's when I started thinking, okay, I want to write something else, and I really wanted to be published. I sort of didn't want to waste any more time writing another book that also was going to get rejected. So I thought really kind of seriously about it and thought about this hook that they were all talking about, and then started writing it. And then a friend of mine told me about the Bath Novel Award. So I entered that in 2016, I think. And I hadn't even finished the novel. I just sent off the first 3 chapters or something. And I got longlisted, but I hadn't finished the novel. So I then had to write the whole book in a month. And it was just,
oh no,
it was a nightmare. As you can imagine, it wasn't very good. I didn't get shortlisted. But, you know, that did give me a little, like Laura was saying just now, a little kind of feeling of, oh, you know, maybe it's a possibility. Maybe I can write, you know, my writing's not too bad. So carried on with that. And then the following year, applied for the same Right Now competition that Laura won. And so it's the year before Laura. And so it's kind of aimed at mentoring writers who are currently underrepresented in the industry. So there were 11 of us all together in my year, and we're all sort of paired up with an editor at Penguin, which is amazing. We worked with them for a year. But, you know, for me also, that wasn't the sort of, you know, I was kind of torn between thinking, this is it, I'm definitely going to get a publishing deal at the end of it, I've got this far. And also that kind of obviously doubt setting in, thinking, oh, it's probably not going to happen. And it didn't happen, actually, because at the end of that year, I sent it out to agents and I still was getting the same rejections or hearing nothing. And that went on for probably another year. And it wasn't until 2019 I started going to some festivals and stuff like that. And I did another draft of the book, and just, you know, through creating a bit of buzz around the book in the summer of 2019, that's when I got signed by my literary agent. And then it will happen really quickly after that.
See, I will commend you guys, because, you know, I've heard from so many authors saying the amount of rejection letters you go through and the emails and just the constant feel like you're just on the door of like all the big publishers, small publishers, and it can be quite, it can kind of beat you down after a time. I mean, James, how did you end up getting, you know, your first novel actually out there? I mean, how long did that take for you?
Yes, I always find it a slightly tricky question saying how long did it take, because I probably started making notes from this book probably as soon as I left university, which is 6-7 years ago now, but I probably didn't start actually writing it until, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 years ago. Then I applied to go on Curtis Brown's writing course. They offer a 6-month writing course, and I was rejected from the course the first time around.
Oh.
So my rejection started very early, so I got used to it. I applied again for the next course and got on that time. So I found that really useful. You get lots of like industry experience, agents come and talk to you, authors come and talk to you, and I suppose that gave me the confidence that, you know, I could write a book if these people liked it. So after that, I probably spent another year writing it after the course, but then signed up with my agent, and then it all kind of happened really quickly at the end, actually. So it's like the start was quite a long process, and then from getting an agent to getting published was fairly quick. But again, you have all the rejections. They seem to come first when you send it out to agents or to publishers, is the rejections which come quickly. So you kind of have to get used to that.
You have to breathe, just breathe. No. Just think someone somewhere will like it. And obviously
it gets a bit nerve-wracking. So I think we sent out, I don't know, 15 imprints or something, you know, you're kind of ticking down, no, rejection, you're kind of getting down to the, like, how many are left, like, come on, please, one of you.
Yeah,
it must be quite, I mean, obviously I'm sure you do your research into publishers, but I noticed when I started working at my job that the amount of umbrella systems that these publishers have. So you think one publisher is completely on its own, and you find out it's part of another publisher and part of another publisher, and you just think, for you guys sending out all those kind of, you know, the manuscripts and the kind of cover letters and things, did you ever come across a rejection that you later found out was from exactly the same publisher, but just a different umbrella of them?
Yeah, I had a weird one. So I actually sent it to an agent who sent me a rejection email like 6 months later on the day I signed the deal with Penguin, which is quite an unusual bit. So I did kind of write back saying, well, actually,
Yeah.
no, anyway, so.
Good for you. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I actually ended up getting two. I think I had 3 UK offers in the end, which was amazing. But I think 2 of those offers were both from imprints that were under the kind of Hachette umbrella. And I like you, I didn't really know that was even a thing. And luckily, my agent didn't tell. Well, I don't know if it was luckily, but she didn't tell me who she was sending the book out to, because I think I probably would have then become obsessed with following them on social media and trying to work out what they might like, what they don't like. I don't know. It's probably best for me not to know. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is true. Yeah,
I agree. No, I mean, I had the same thing. Like when I was doing Right Now, I was working with Fig Tree, an imprint of Penguin, and they rejected the book. And the next day, Michael Joseph messaged to say, could they pick up the manuscript? But it was too late because it had already gone out on like wider submission by then. But yeah, it's mad. Their desks are like next to each other.
Are they?
That was going to say, when you said Michael Joseph, I was like, but that is Fig Tree and that's Penguin, so that's just insane when that happens.
Yeah,
it's really strange because you think they don't know each other, and as you said, they literally are probably sitting next to each other at the same desks.
Yeah,
and they're just like, did you get this? Just like, oh, I did. Well, okay, I'll pick it up. Because when we get books in work, a lot of them come from Hachette. So, but you ask for it from Penguin or HarperCollins, but it still comes from Hachette, and it's just like, that's a world that no one knows. And to be honest, it's one of those curtains I don't think I really want to kind of peek behind just yet. So I think I'll stay away from that. So all 3 of you, this is another kind of group question. James, I'll start with you. How easy was it for you to find an agent when you were trying to get this out there?
Yeah, I actually think I got really lucky with this, because I know there are plenty of kind of stories where people send it to 50 agents and don't get anywhere. I kind of, it all happened really quickly actually. Once I submitted, I think I submitted to 3 or 4 agents, and 2 replied positively, and went to meet both of them and went from there. And so yeah, mine was quite a quick, easy story, very luckily.
That does
so
sound
yours was just easy. That's Lorraine's like, that's not fair. Lorraine, how was the experience for you trying to find an agent?
It was terrible.
No, the
I just didn't
opposite.
think it was going to happen. Yeah, I don't know. Like so at the end of the Penguin year, as I said, I sent out to maybe, because the agent I really wanted, who actually is the agent I do have now, Hannah Ferguson, wasn't accepting submissions. So anyway, there were obviously other agents that I also thought might like the book and that I really liked. So I think I submitted to 4 agents, got 4 rejections, another 4. Didn't hear anything. So yeah, so like a bit like with the publishers, the numbers were just going down and down in terms of the agents that I really thought I would like to be with and thought might like it. And it wasn't until I started, I think I went to a Winchester Writers Festival and I had 3 one-on-ones with agents. And just before I went to the festival, I'd done another sort of redraft, and I did feel better about the book actually. And when I went to these festivals, I think it was something to do with that personal connection as well, actually meeting an agent face to face, just me and them. And 2 of them asked for the full. So as soon as that happened, I then did the classic kind of emailed the others I'd submitted to and said, oh, 2 agents have asked for the full. Then suddenly 2 more asked for the full. And, from then it kind of spiraled. So it's almost like I needed that kind of that little kind of buzz about the book for them to even notice it or something. I don't know.
I think there's a lot to do with like timing and kind of almost luck with it, isn't it? I was going to say, because Lorraine and I have got the same agent, and I think we signed up like about a month apart, and both our books feature Paris, Amsterdam. So I wonder if Hannah was just in the mood for Paris, Amsterdam that month, and it kind of worked.
She was just on one. She was like, do you know what? Give me all of the Paris and Amsterdam vibes. It was just like the publisher was like, why do you keep doing that? And she's like, oh, just leave me. I'm getting you people. Ignore me. It's fine. And Laura, what about you? How was your journey finding an agent?
It was actually sort of more similar to James, really. Like, I'm very lucky. I submitted to, I think, 5 agents to start off with, and then I sort of immediately heard back from one. But this is just how it shows how much luck has to do with it. She was off sick, and she'd said to her assistant, oh, find me something that's like a bit like feel good or some whatever. And her assistant was like, well, there's this. And she just had the time because she was lying in bed to read it. Otherwise, she probably would never have seen it. It had like just come in that sort of hour or something. And then so meeting up with her was the catalyst for everything else, because I did exactly what Lorraine did. I emailed the other two that I really wanted to meet with and said, I've had an offer of representation, like, but I would really love to meet you. And then it all sort of snowballed. So yeah, I really lucky. It happened sort of within about a month of sending off my queries. But I think
that's really good. That's I mean, next time you probably would have been standing in the shadows with a blow dart. It's just like, well, if you do that, oh, you're off sick, you can read my manuscript. Off you go, enjoy.
Yeah, that's my tip for everyone else.
It's because I read too much. People are gonna be like, does that happen? Like, no, it's just in novels. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's because I've spoken to quite a few authors, and some of them struggle to kind of get representation. Which actually just lead on to my next question. James, I'll start with you. What do you think really piqued the interest to the agent that was unique to your novel? Was there a really unique selling point for this novel that you think they picked up on?
I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because I like this story. So
go for it.
Obviously my book is about a man who flips a coin for the year. So my working title was actually Tosser. So I sent that's so good. That's my subject line for all the emails I sent to the agent. So that I think that probably caught their attention for the right or the wrong reason. I'm not sure if I'd recommend that as a tactic, but it seemed to work.
So far we've got making someone sick, just putting Tosser in every single email. This is, guys, I hope you people are writing this stuff down because this is gold, honestly. Lorraine, well, that's it. Lorraine, that was the issue. These two got it right, and you're just like, you're trying to play it too straight. That's the problem.
I know. I wrote a very straight cover letter.
You're like, please. It was just like, no. So Lorraine, what do you think was, is unique to your novel that caught the agent's attention?
Yeah, I think that hook that I was talking about earlier, I think she thought that it would be very sellable. So this was a complete turnaround from the first novel, which was not at all sellable, and that it was something she'll be able to pitch quite nicely to publishers, and that they in turn would be able to pitch to booksellers and readers and stuff like that. And also I think she liked that I'd created characters that were kind of really three-dimensional, because that had been some other early feedback I'd had. But I happened to start a counselling course at the same time that I was started the Right Now mentoring scheme. So it was really kind of intense in terms of I was busy, but just doing this counselling course made me think so much more about, why we are the way we are, why we behave the way we are, why we find ourselves in these same relationships, and thinking back to childhood and adolescence and all of that. And, I hadn't really thought that much about that kind of stuff before. So I think adding all of that stuff in just before I started submitting to agents really helped.
So just giving your characters a bit more of a rounded human feel, I suppose.
Yeah,
because that's
believable human feel. Yeah.
And Laura, what about you? All I remember from the tagline of yours is the fact that she leaves and she takes the cat. I mean, come on, you put a cat in a book and you've sold it. So did you literally just say to them, well, there's a cat in it? And they were just like, yeah, okay, we'll have you, it's fine.
That was basically it. I mean, in the very first chapter, she steals the cat from her ex-girlfriend, and that was the thing that everyone just kept coming back to, and they were really excited about. And originally I had a different title. The cat in the book is called Malcolm, and originally the book was called Malcolm. And so yeah, people just loved the character of the cat, and I think that was sort of the hook, as well as it being a lesbian rom-com and not a straight rom-com, which everyone was pretty excited about. But yeah, for sure the hook was the cat.
The cat is the be all and end all, obviously. It's just like that is it is the cat. It is just the cat. I mean, I would say definitely yours as well, obviously, as you said, it being like a lesbian rom-com. It's one of those things that is still quite new to the genre, I feel. I mean, yeah, there are books out there, but especially with that, it was really the huge hook of people thinking it was going to be like an atypical rom-com. It's just like, think again. And I think that's important to kind of, like with all three of your books, you have to kind of stand out and say, oh, yes, it's a rom-com, but it's different for these reasons. And that's what you want, really. So this is kind of like a fun question to kind of throw in here, but this is aimed at all three of you. And Lorraine, I'll start with you. What's your favourite rom-com and why do you love it so much?
Well, I don't know why. Whenever anyone asks me about rom-coms, I always think of films. So I must try and think about books. I watch a lot of films, a lot of TV. In the recent, apart from the books of these two, obviously, the last year or so, I've read Our Story by Miranda Dickinson, and I really loved it because it was set in a TV writer's room. And it's actually got me really thinking about being a TV writer. In fact, James and I have been doing a screenwriting course, haven't we? I think maybe I was just inspired by Miranda Dickinson. So that I really loved because it's not only was it a really beautiful love story, but it's set in a world that I found really exciting and interesting, and couldn't stop reading about. So yeah.
Fabulous. James, what about you?
Yeah, I'm a bit like Lorraine. Kind of film is probably my first love, so I normally think about films. But in terms of books, I'd say my two favorite rom-coms, probably the ones which inspired me to start writing, were High Fidelity by Nick Hornby and Start to Pretend by David Nichols. As a teenage boy, I wasn't a particularly big reader. I was, playing football instead, and those are the two books which kind of got me reading and got me into this kind of genre and probably influenced me the most.
Fabulous. And Laura, what about you?
Bridget Jones. I just love Bridget Jones, and I think Bridget Jones's Diary, the first one, is just the perfect book for me. It's so funny, and I adore Bridget, and to try and write anything even half as funny as those books is the goal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I did a bit of background information. I know James literally declared his dying love for David Beckham, but we won't talk about that because that might be for another book in the future, James. Do you think?
Yeah, maybe, potentially, yeah.
James, I agree with you. I'm happy with you. That'd be great for me.
Yeah, he looked a bit shocked when I told him that. But...
Well, how close were you at the time? I mean, come on, you've got to kind of think of context here.
I was next to him. I didn't shout at him like a megaphone.
He probably was thinking you should have done that because then you weren't standing next to him.
Yeah, security did step in and
just kind of just keep me away. Just keep them. It's fine. It's fine. So this next question is kind of to kind of destigmatize a bit of writing and being authors in general. Now, all three of you, because obviously you're all debut authors with these books, the biggest thing is, biggest misinterpretation is people think you write one novel, you're a millionaire. Obviously, that isn't the case. It's a lot of hard work. All three of you, do you still have like normal daytime jobs? I mean, Laura, do you still have a job that goes aside with your writing?
Yeah, I work full time still. So I work in news. So it's pretty full on, and it's just a balancing act. Like I tend to wake up very, very early in the morning and try and do an hour, maybe more, before I start work. So if I can start writing at like 6:30, just because then, I sort of haven't started reading my emails and it feels like a sort of clear space. It's nice and quiet. No one can interrupt me. And and then I guess when I'm on deadline, like I am at the moment, it's like finishing work and starting again in the evening. But no, that's one book and a millionaire is a myth. I would say for 99.9% of debut authors, there's that, the odd one, but yeah.
Lorraine, what about you?
Well, I did actually give up my job probably the day after I got my deal because
It's just like, well, that's it, I'm gone.
Because I was in a job that I didn't like. I mean, I really hope no one from my old work is watching, but I was a secretary in a school, and I'd taken that job because I was trying to be an actor before. So I'd taken that job at the school thinking, I need to have some stability and some money coming in, so I'll just take this job for now and then I'll get this acting job that I've been trying to get for the last 7 years and it'll all happen. And then of course it did not happen. And then I went on maternity leave and had a baby, a little boy. And so after that I thought, okay, this is a good opportunity for me not to go back to that full-time job that I hate. So I went back part-time And that's how I guess, yeah. So I did write a lot in my lunch hours, but I also had those 2 days, I guess, where I'll try and do a bit of writing. Yeah, so working part-time meant that I had zero money. So I kept seeing all these lovely writing courses that I wanted to do, or, writing retreats that I might like to go on, or even, I don't know, buying books, whatever. And I just couldn't afford to do any of that stuff. But on the plus side, I did have a little bit more time to write. So that's what I did. And then as soon as I got my deal, because I was only working part-time and I just thought, okay, my dream is to be a writer. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to hand in my notice and try. So, maybe I will regret that at some point. Hopefully not.
Well, the thing is, though, I think it's important to kind of follow what you want to do, and I commend you for doing that, because I think everyone's thought of one point in their job that if they don't enjoy it, to just be able to go, I'm going. I've got to go. I've got to find something different. And I actually did that with the job I'm in now. I was a Christmas temp 3 years ago. I left a full-time job and took a punt, and I'm still there. I'm probably not even employed there anymore. They just let me work there for free. They just don't dare tell me, but I'm not going to say anything. And James, what about you? Do you still do anything while you're still writing?
Yep. So I work in a school. It is tricky. I think it's very tricky to balance. And I think it's harder actually at this point. So I think we're all writing our second books, and you've got much tighter pressures on the second book. The first book, you can kind of, obviously no one cares at that point because no one knows about the book. The second one, you've got essentially a year to write it. And obviously the last year's been bizarre, and I don't think it's been the most conducive to writing, but it's just the fact, you don't always want to write when you come home from work, or you have to go back every weekend to write. So it's quite a sacrifice. And even when I was on the writing course, that was, having to catch the 10:30 p.m. National Express coach back to Bristol from London every week. So it's kind of, it's not all the glamorous kind of side to it that you think. Certainly, as I sit in my studio flat, certainly not a millionaire quite yet.
You saying National Express just gives me shudders. So it's just like, convulsions. So just like,
yeah. The 10:30 National Express is not the best, which gets in about like 1 a.m. to Bristol. So.
You could write a whole book about that, to be honest. It might be quite bleak. Might be quite bleak, but you could actually do it. Now, this is a good question for people who are kind of trying to keep their novels going at a good pace. So, James, I'll start with you. Do you have any kind of pacing mechanism that you found important to have in this book, rather than letting it? Because I read a lot of books, and sometimes you feel it might move too slow or too fast. Is there anything that you wanted to kind of make sure that things moved at a good enough rate for people to keep reading, basically?
Good question. And again, I don't know if I was that aware of the first book. I think I've probably become more aware of this now of the second one, slightly more professional now. I think something I did do is, send about rom-com films and rom-com books, is kind of look at like the pattern that lots of them do follow. And it's kind of, once you see it, it kind of ruins the genre for you, because you kind of know that they all follow exactly the same plot points and exactly the same beats. And then when you watch it, you kind of know what's coming. But I found that quite useful to do in terms of, at this point, this needs to happen, this point, this needs to happen. And I suppose in mine, I had the fact that he was flipping a coin, and that kind of gave you a bit of a license to kind of go where you wanted with it, because obviously you could decide which choice the coin made, which kind of freed it up a bit. But I think this book I'm writing now, I'm probably a bit more conscious of pacing and trying to improve that.
And Lorraine, yours has a very good method, as you said, obviously it's over a period of 24 hours. So was that a conscious choice to do that? So it felt like it was, as you said, you could read it in real time. Was that something that you consciously made sure that was in there?
Yeah, I think it was. And I was reading at the time, I was reading a lot of psychological thrillers. So much so that actually some of the feedback from agents was, well, when I started reading, I thought it was going to be a psychological thriller. They were like massively disappointed when it then became this other romantic thing. So I did have to adapt that method somewhat. But yeah, I think I wanted to keep some of that sort of pace and tension that you get in a psychological thriller in the book. And so I thought by, making it in a limited amount of time, there's lots of references to time, there's lots of looking at watches, looking at clocks, asking for times. There's lots of train leaving at certain times and trains being missed. And so, yeah, that I think helped to create a bit of pace, but it's really difficult to fit it all in, to think about all these places I wanted them to go in Paris and be able to, realistically have them go to them especially as I have an American deal with Penguin as well, and they were very much all about having kind of quintessential Parisian spots in there, and I hadn't put them in the original draft, so they wanted the Eiffel Tower, Champs-Élysées, the Seine, so I then had to like fit even more locations in, and you know, it could be very tight for the characters, but I think it's just about believable.
See, that's quite interesting, because obviously James was saying when you see the pattern, it kind of ruins it for you. And obviously you saying that, you know, the publisher's like, well, we'd like spots that are recognizable to be in your book. Did you find you had to kind of rewrite sections for them to all of a sudden go off track to go to the right location, or did it kind of, you just slotted it in and it kind of felt natural?
No, I had to completely rewrite sections and swap things around, because they wanted them, you know, for example, they wanted them to go to these quintessential Parisian parts first, and then as they got to know each other, then he shows her a little bit more of his real Paris. But I'd kind of written it the other way around originally, so yeah, it took a huge amount of restructuring and work and panic.
Loads of sleepless nights. Like,
Yeah,
oh God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And Laura, what about you? How is the pacing method for yours acting out?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's actually a really similar experience to James. Again, like I wasn't particularly aware of pacing when I was writing my first novel. I would happily have had the characters sort of meandering about doing all sorts of things, and then like sort of stumbling across something happening or whatever. And it was like really when I learned the joy of having an editor who would be like, right, obstacle here, solution here, like they're all going to go along fine until this is where it's all going to go horribly wrong, and then we're going to bring it back. And I was like, so for my second book, it's been a completely different story. Like I've been really aware of sort of having certain things per chapter, but I mean in my first book there's a natural countdown. They've got 8 weeks specifically to train for something, which really helped, rather than just having this like open-ended time frame. But yeah.
So now this question is probably gonna, you know, opinionate people, and again it's for all of you. And Lorraine, I'll start with you. How important is it to have a happy ending in a romantic comedy, and is it always necessary? Do you think it always has to be a happy ending?
For me, it has to be either happy or hopeful.
Okay.
Like I was devastated. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say. There's a particular book that was very popular and that I loved. Let's say it's by David Nichols. And I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I found it difficult to accept an ending that was
James, what about you? Do you think it's always important for the person to walk away with the best result, or do you not mind if it doesn't always work out?
I was going to reference the same book that Lorraine was.
But if Laura says it as well, I'm leaving. How about that?
We love David, by the way.
Yeah. But I suppose it worked in that case because it was so, you know, unprecedented to have an ending like that, which is kind of shocking and had that shock value. I think one of the values of this genre is that kind of comforting feel. So I wouldn't recommend ending a book. Can I just give it away? I think everyone tried the book anyway. By killing off one of your main characters, I think that's quite a bold thing to do. I think people read this genre because they want to feel, you know, happy. They want to feel like it's boosted them.
And then David Nichols walks in and goes, "Hang on a minute, that's not happening." No,
I think he said though. I think he said if he wrote it again, he wouldn't do that. I think I read somewhere he said that. So
really,
yeah.
Yeah, probably because he had a few too many tears from people. That might be why. It's just like, oh, okay, well, I'll just do it in the next book. And Laura, what about you? Do you think everyone should always have that kind of they lived happily ever after, or should they have something a bit more realistic?
I don't think necessarily a happily ever after, but I do totally agree with Lorraine that I think there should be some hope, even if it's not necessarily what you thought you wanted for the character, for there to be something on the horizon where you think they could be okay. So yeah, I mean, I keep accidentally giving away the end of my novel, so I won't say anything else. I keep getting messages from my editor being like, spoilers, stop saying literally what happens in the end.
Pack it in, sorry.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. So no spoilers, but yeah, not always a happily ever after.
Good. I would have to agree with, I've read a few books recently where you think it's going to finish happy and then literally just the worst outcome happens and you just, I like it when it's kind of off the beaten track rather than everyone always lives, because that's very Disney-esque and not everything's a fairy tale, etc., etc., etc. So this next question is, I keep aiming them all at you, but you're all doing so well that I don't want to kind of leave any of you out, otherwise you're just sitting in the corner with your popcorn. So Lorraine, this question is first to you. How do you go about creating your main protagonist? Is there a where you do it, a method, like you write everything down, or do you just think as it goes on the page?
Yeah, well, for me, I have to start with like the sort of one-line pitch or hook thing and the setting. I can't even think about character until I've got that, strangely. And then once I've got that, I kind of think, well, what kind of character would find that situation difficult and challenging and have obstacles and that kind of thing. So then I start with that character. And I tend to write a few things down. I don't tend to do the whole sort of questionnaire about, how old are they and what star sign are they and that kind of stuff. I have done that in the past, but then I don't remember it or I don't find it particularly useful. So just, I guess, try and think of some key character traits. And I always think about their background, I guess, with my counselling side, think about, what their childhood was like and why that's led them to be how they are now. And then if I'm doing a rom-com, then I'll think about what kind of person would complement that person, but not seem like they would initially. So where would the challenges be? And then do the same with that character.
Fab. Laura, what about you? How do you kind of envision the hero in this story? Like, do you write anything down, or do you just kind of let it come as it forms in your head?
Yeah, I mean, literally complete opposite to Lorraine's process, which is so interesting. Like, I just have characters like sort of fully form in my head, and that's what I did. The main characters, Ali and Jeremy, just formed for me, and I got to know them really well before I wrote anything down, and then I sort of felt as though I would know what they would both do in any situation. And who they would be attracted to, and how they might react to stuff. But I don't think I wrote much down. I think I just spend a lot of time sort of living with them, as it were, and then before sort of writing anything down, and then the plot comes after.
So you would say, like, get the main character sorted and the plot kind of fabricates around them.
Totally, because then you know what kind of stuff, what kind of things they might get into, or like, their world starts creating itself pretty much once you know them really, really well. For me, anyway. Yeah.
Fab. And James, what about you?
Yeah, it's really interesting hearing Laura say, how you kind of get to know these made up people. The other day, my second book, I was trying to channel a 15-year-old French girl living in the 1970s. It's quite strange. But I suppose, like, harping back to kind of the previous questions, I think in the flip side, so much it was probably based on personal experience. It was almost quite a lot of me and the main character, which then, if we talk about the rejection question, some of the rejections were like, oh, he's not a very likable character. That kind of like double pain there, like not just criticize the book, but also like, okay, bit personal. So the book I'm writing now probably had to think a bit more about characters. It's not me, and this one is now, trying to channel this 15-year-old French girl instead, which is slightly more tricky.
I can't imagine why. So I would say this is a question that I think a lot of people would like to know the answer to. And again, it's to all of you. And James, I'll start with you. What was it like the first time you actually went from just thinking of this idea and thinking, years in advance, thinking, well, hopefully one day I'll be published, one day I'll have a book on the shelf. What was that initial reaction when when the publisher sent your finished copy to you and you opened it? Did you just tear your shirt asunder? Did you just cry? Did you, just like punt a cat? Like what did you do when you first opened it and saw it in your hands?
So it's a strange one. I don't know if I'm kind of built that way. I see lots of people on Instagram, authors, like, they do their unboxing and start crying, and I don't know, I didn't kind of get that kind of feeling. I suppose because you work on it for so long, it's like the year you kind of see it all before. And I think as well, obviously we've all been in a situation with like the strange time of bookshops being closed. I didn't have a proper launch party, didn't get to go and see it in the bookshop for a long time. That was kind of, ruined it slightly, the big moment. So yeah, the big moment was just like me in my flat, just getting one in the post and opening it on my, by my own, which is probably not as exciting. But yeah, obviously still really cool. And at the moment, lots of like the foreign versions of the book are coming out, so I'm getting sent those, and it's it's really cool to see how they're each been, all the different covers, and got like whole like shelf of my book, which is quite cool.
Yeah, that's the covers thing is always interesting, because obviously everyone has a different cover design, and I've experienced it a few times where people think it's a different book, or if it's a different title, especially between the US and the UK. So if you go onto Amazon, you will see certain books that are out in the UK, but they're not been published in the US yet, and they're the same book, but they're under a different name. And you get angry people leaving 1-star reviews because they think it's a new book, and they'll go, "Oh, it wasn't. It's the same book in the UK." And it's interesting when you get these different covers and different people's interpretations of them. I mean, Lorraine, what was it like for you when you first opened the parcel and it was your book in your hands?
Yeah, I don't know. Like James, I'm wondering whether I'm completely unemotional, but I think it was just the situation being in lockdown. And, my editor had left as well. And so I had a new editor who's lovely, but I've never actually met her in person. And everything was online. And, normally I suppose I would go and celebrate these milestones by going out and seeing my friends and my family, and, and I just couldn't do any of that. So I don't know, it sort of felt a bit flat until I could see it in a bookshop. That probably for me was the moment. So on the 12th of April, I went to Waterstones in Piccadilly and I saw my book for the first time. And I didn't cry, because as mentioned, I am obviously very unemotional. But yeah, it was a very cool feeling, definitely.
Laura, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, same. We all very similar.
I think all three of you have
emotionally dead.
Literally, guys, these authors are just, their souls have gone. Just don't.
There's nothing left. We're
shells.
just husks.
They're just,
yeah.
that's it. It's all in the book. All the emotions in the book.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a very brief window last year where I think it was like October, and we were allowed out, and
Yes.
that's when my proof came, and so I like took my proof out for brunch, and that was like a cool fun thing, and then seeing my book in the bookshop, that was the big thing. I went and like signed some books in Gaze the Word on like 2 days after the bookshops opened, and it was the best thing ever. I didn't cry, obviously, because disgust, dead inside, but it was just such a like milestone. I could never have dreamed that moment would happen, and that was where it really hit me, seeing like my book alongside all of these other amazing books and speaking to the booksellers there, and it's just the coolest thing ever.
It's a strange thing seeing it for the first time. My first one was in Asda, because the supermarkets were open, so like I was just like just walk up and down like the shelves, just like, yeah, there's my book, like waiting for someone to care.
I would say when I get new books in at work and I unpack them, if it's a book I've enjoyed, my fellow booksellers will see me just running around the store going, "Oh my god, this book's amazing," because it's literally it's physical, and that's the difference. Yeah. It's one thing to see it online and see obviously it's getting published, but as you guys have all experienced with lockdown and things like that, it can be quite a anticlimactic experience, I suppose, because you've worked so hard on it, and then for them to say, "Oh, but the bookshops will be closed until the 12th of April," and it must have been hard for all three of you to kind of, you've got this deal and you've got this gorgeous book on the way, but you can't go out and physically see it in stores. So it must have been quite hard for all three of you.
I think as well, because it was that, the first lockdown, I think we were kind of all like, "Oh, we'll be okay, be fine by time ours come out." And then, then the second one, third one is kind of just like never ending. And I think publishing is so competitive. Like, you get your slots when the books come out, and it's kind of, if you miss those first couple of months, it's, your book can be off the shelves by the time it comes. It's, you worry, you put, these years of your life into this book, and due to something which isn't in your control, it's not going to do as well. But it's been nice to see it since shops been open.
Yeah, I would definitely say, from a bookseller point of view, people have been buying books by the bucket load. And I think they're as excited as you authors are to actually be able to actually go out and see these books rather than just see them online, because I was actually told the other day that yes, Amazon is there, but the algorithm isn't a human being, whereas booksellers can actually find you a book that they know that you'll love. So all three of you should know that all my fellow booksellers and me, we're doing our best to get your book out there on the shelves and get everyone to see it, because you've worked hard on these things. You know, you put your blood and your sweat and many a tear. I mean, all three of you have already said you're emotionless, but you know, there's no the tears might be dust, but I'm just being hypothetical here. But honestly, it's just great that all three of your books are now out there and people can actually go into the stores and pick them up, which is, it must be better than just sitting, as you know, as James said, in your flat on your own with a book going, oh, this is great. I've got this. Although according to Laura, she took a book out to brunch. I mean, I'm sure there was other people there, but she didn't confirm it. So she probably just took this random book to a brunch and be like, how are you? Like literally, and people are like, why is she talking to a book for?
You know, I had a funny experience earlier where I went out for lunch, and you know how the cover of my book, just to demo it again, has got an Eiffel Tower on it. That's really bad lighting. And I was sitting kind of on the table behind was a girl with an Eiffel Tower tattoo about here. And I was like, I just felt like slipping my book out my bag and saying, you know, if you like the Eiffel Tower, you might like this book. Okay.
That's amazing.
I didn't. You'll be pleased to know.
I'm going to start reading mine on the tube, just so people are used to seeing it everywhere. You know, subliminal messaging.
Yeah.
Well, subliminal isn't when you start throwing it at people. I mean, you know, there is a limit, but it's fine. Just do superliminal. Just throw it at people. It's fine. That's what I do to sell my books. People don't want them, but I'm just like, you will buy this book. It's as simple as that. So we've only got a few minutes left, and I've had a few questions through from the beautiful audience. So I'm just going to ask them why we still have time. So this first one's actually aimed at the lovely James, who we all know wants to be David Beckham's husband one day, but we won't go down that route just yet. So this is actually from Peter Baber, and he says, James, the plot of your book sounds vaguely similar to Luke Reinhardt's The Dice Man. Were you at all nervous about that, and has anyone ever mentioned that before?
Yeah, quite a few people mentioned it. But
he's like, right, let me just reel this off.
But no, it wasn't something I was worried about. The Dice Man is quite a dark and it's a very different book to mine. Obviously, it's the similarities, the character in use of the dice and to decide on fates, as I used to call him, but takes a very different turn, the Dice Man, to this. And actually, I think weirdly in publishers actually quite like books which are similar to others. Like, I'm not saying you should just plagiarize someone's book, but if you can like put a spin on it or say, you know, it's this meets that actually is what they like, because they can say, oh, this sold well, so let's give people more of that.
I would agree with that, just because I've seen a big uptake in the few recent months of things like Greek mythology, a lot of that kind of stuff. So as James is right in saying, clearly, obviously don't rip someone else's work off, but a lot of people do associate certain books with other books, and it's not a bad thing to say, oh, well, this is very much like that. And obviously the Dice Man is a heck of a lot darker than your book might not be that light after all, James. Is that what you're trying to tell us? Like, well, it's actually quite dark romantic comedy, you know. If you can't handle it, don't read it. But, you never know. And then I do have another question, and this is actually, I believe, aimed at everybody. So this is from Louise Fain, and Lorraine, I'll start with you. And she quotes, so this is quotation: I love to know where you get your ideas from. Do you get the idea from a hook first, or a theme, or does the character? So obviously we've already discussed this. So I would probably just build on this and say, what's the most important factor when deciding on a new novel? So Lorraine, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be kind of excited to write it. I think when I'm trying to think, when I came up with an idea for book 2, I kind of wrote down maybe 7 or 8 vague ideas and sent them to my editor. But there were definitely 1 or 2 that stood out for me that I thought, well, you know, I really would be excited to write that, I suppose. And luckily one of them came back and it was, you know, one that she liked, one that I liked, and that's what we went with. But I think, yeah, that for me is a key point. I've got to want to sit down and know what happens to these characters.
And Laura, what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I, for my book too, I had a sort of scenario in my head, a sort of particular chemistry between two people who perhaps it shouldn't have been there, and that I sort of built the whole book around that. But I had to want to spend the past year with them, and I'm, you know, still editing it now, and I still love spending that time with them and working on them. And yeah, I think that's really important.
And James?
Yeah, so the first one, I think the characters probably came first. It was actually the coin flipping like hook, which kind of came later, but tied it all together. And I needed that. You know, it was kind of just going nowhere really. It's just this kind of just these characters kind of experience in life, and that was the kind of thing which brought it together. But my second book, it's been more kind of driven by the hook, driven by the plot, and then the characters can come second. So a bit of both.
See, that's really interesting to see, like to hear, because obviously I think all three of you are right in the fact that you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. So you've got to want to tell their story, so to speak. Otherwise, if you can't get excited about, like Lorraine said, what's the point of even writing it?
Totally.
Yeah, you've got to be out there and like, right, want to see this published, want to see everyone reading it. So yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. That was actually a really good answer from all of you. So I think that is about time. It's literally nearly 8 o'clock, and basically this hour has just flown by talking about everything romantic comedy. Now, guys, I just want to know, like, from all of you, who is your biggest crush and why? So James, I think we might have established yours, but would you like to build on that any further? Would you like a rebuttal, or someone else maybe?
I don't know. Someone asked me in an interview this the other day, and then I'd like, 7 billion people in the world. I couldn't think of one name. Come back to me. The other two can answer first.
Right, okay. No. He can have a few seconds. Laura, what about you? And don't say your cat.
No, my mind's gone completely blank. I literally can't think of one person. Like, I honestly can't think of a single human being right now. This is really stressful. Lorraine, you must have something.
Go, I've got one. My crush is, and has always been, oh, I'm embarrassed to say it now because nobody else ever has this crush, Liam Gallagher. I adore.
Okay, we're just going to leave that hanging there. Just that tumbleweed that Lorraine can see behind her. Just, can I just, why? Is there just something about him, or is it just you look at him and go, yeah, he'd be mine in a romantic comedy?
I mean, amazing eyes, and also I quite like a bad boy with a heart of gold. And actually, Leo in the book kind of is that. Yeah, bad boy with a bit of a troubled past and a heart of gold.
Oh, there we go. So, James, I'm not going to deflect from you any further. So we need an answer, I'm afraid. If you say David Beckham,
not as bad as
I'm
mine.
In Bristol, so don't. Otherwise, I will come and find you.
Yeah, I'll stick to my bromance with David Beckham. We'll stick to that.
Oh, hopefully he'll see. He might be watching at home with Victoria next to him, going, "Is there something you need to tell me?" So yeah, that could be a thing. Laura, has your brain actually clicked onto someone out of the billions of people in the world?
Yes, because I just watched Line of Duty last night, and my crush is Vicky McClure, Kate Fleming. Amazing. You guys
see now you've triggered people by bringing up Line of Duty there.
Sorry.
I think I've not watched it because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I've literally on Twitter all through today, people have just been losing their minds over it. Laura, was it that bad? Was the ending that bad?
It was rubbish. Yeah,
James literally is like nodding his head off like a nodding dog, just like, yes, it was trash.
Yeah, it was trash, and I'm very disappointed. I would love to know what everyone else thinks.
That's what the whole thing's
really about. Yeah.
James, was it that trashy? Was it literally? Did it just bring you up and then just cut you down?
Yeah, I think it's always the problem with any of those huge shows. It's just that anticipation. I think actually probably it builds it up, and then everyone's kind of putting their fan theories forward and probably thought through more than they actually did when they're filming it. But I don't think that last series ended that well. They kind of did the same, where they kind of carried it on, and you do wonder whether they're going to carry it on again.
Surely not. They can't keep dragging it on, but they did leave it open, didn't they? God.
Laura's thinking it's a corpse. Laura's like, it's just dead, don't touch it. Lorraine, did you watch it?
I've not watched any. I really want to.
Same. No. It's one of those things. It's like when Schitt's Creek did the rounds on Twitter. I've not watched that either.
No, I haven't.
I'm sorry.
That ends well.
Guys, that's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah, but everyone. The thing is that this is probably going to annoy a lot of people. I don't like. It sounds horrible. I don't mean this in a horrible way at all. But some people just grate on me. The mother. I know. I've probably just lost about 2,000 fans. That's it. It's just, I'll get a note saying you're never chairing again. I don't know. It's like, obviously I need to watch a full episode. It's just what I've seen of it. She just seems very, obviously she's supposed to be grating, and obviously she's supposed to be kind of, everything's about her. But I don't know. I mean, I think Laura's about to defriend me and never talk to me again.
I'm just trying to work out if I can kick the host out of the meeting.
How rude. How very dare you. See, this is why I said it at the end of the Zoom rather than at the start. Otherwise, the numbers would have just dropped straight off. So on that note, I think I am going to say a huge thank you to the gorgeous Lorraine Brown, James Bailey, and Laura Kay. You can get all 3 of their books now from waterstones.com. Don't use that A word. I won't even say the word. But thank you all so much. Did you have a good time? Was it a good evening?
Yeah,
Very good.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
I'm slightly worried that we have discovered we're emotionally void, and
yeah.
I might need counselling with you, Lorraine, if you can.
Oh yeah.
So Lorraine's just thinking, well, now I've got extra money coming in from James counselling, I should be okay while I'm doing my next novel. So yes, thank you very much all for joining. And obviously, if you do read any of their books, just remember, A, they're dead inside, and B, James really does want to marry David Beckham. That's all I'm going to say to that one. So now the lovely Joanna, who's been looking after the whole thing, technically she should uncouple all 4 of us from the chat. So thank you for everyone who watched this evening at the Stay at Home Festival. There's loads of events still to come, and honestly, just enjoy it. It's free. Enjoy.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a highly entertaining session. Brilliant conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of the festival.
It was fun. It was fun. It was really good. Yeah.
I'm going to end the session for you all now.